Hi everyone, it's your favorite MLB newsbreaker, Bob Nightingale, and you're listening to the Lollygaggers Dynasty Recap. Enjoy the show, and thank God for Jeffrey Springs.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Lollygaggers Dynasty Recap. I am your host, Zang, and I am joined once again this week by the intrepid Ace
so
Garcia.
back,
Ace, how are you, my man?
Apologies for the little 2 to 3 week hiatus I took. Real life gets busy, and but happy as hell to be back for sure.
It happens, yeah. Always comes first, the real life stuff does, but of course, very happy to have you back. Glad you're here to recap this week for us. We're going over, week 8 now, which is just past that first sort of third of the season, and we had some obviously pretty interesting results. I think we'll just get started right away with the matchup minute and then obviously talk over some of the stuff that happened during the week as it comes up throughout the episode. We'll start off with the Joinville-friendly Capybaras taking on the Portland Pioneers. Joinville came into the week 2-5 with Portland at 4-3. Portland took the lead on Monday, scoring 43 points, 25 of them coming from Drew Rasmussen. 14 points from Jonathan Aranda contributed to the 39 total scored by Joinville on Monday. Portland held the lead on Tuesday, scoring 56 points, 12 coming from Shea Bangaliers, with 42 points being scored over on the other side. The big day for these two would come on Wednesday as both teams put up over 100 points. On Portland's side, it was a pair of pitchers, Sonny Gray with 31 and Dylan Cease with 32. On Joinville's side, it was a pair of hitters, Bobby Witt with 11 and Gavin Sheets with 12 points. We'll get back to him later, don't you worry. Joinville won the day on Thursday, but was not able to take the lead. They did score 50 points, 25 of them coming from Ronher Suarez. Portland's day mostly came down to some negative pitcher points. Mark Vientos did have 10 points, which was nice, but -8 from Jack Samaniego and -10 from Jack Perkins. A couple of long relievers really sunk what could have potentially been an all-right day for the Pioneers. On Friday, another lower scoring day, 65 for Joinville, 39 for Portland. Trey Savage accounted for 22 of the Capybaras points, while over in Portland, we had another tough day with the long relievers. Tyler Samaniego with another -4 and Andrew Morris with -7. By the time this episode is out, you will have heard Tyler Samaniego is no longer a Portland Pioneer. Shocker. On Saturday, Portland had their second, he's been DFA'd, sent off to the relief pitcher farm in the sky. Portland had their second 100-plus point performance on Saturday as a big day from a trio of starters. Justin Robleski with 24 points, Sandy Alcantara with 27, and the Piglet Peyton Tolley with 32 tallied up 130 total points for them, and they would close out the wire-to-wire win on Sunday with 17 from Corbin Carroll and 11 from Kyle Tucker, the two right fielders doing some nice work there. Not to be outshined, though, although they did lose the matchup, Joinville did score 92 points, 29 from Stephen Kolek, and 24 from Gavin Sheets. Big day for the Padres. Holy Sheets is right. Big day for the Padres.
Yeah, so this
left
was
field,
a very,
first base
good
type
matchup, of course, featuring our lovely main host of this show, Zang. And this was actually a little bit of a kind of a letdown from the Capybaras. They were projected 512 points scored in this matchup. Portland Pioneers were only projected 496, so the Capybaras falling very, very short of their projection, about 60 points there. Meanwhile, the Pioneers exceed their projection, but not by a whole lot, by about a little less than 20 points, but regardless, still beating out those projections. Yeah, Gavin Sheets with the 58, unfortunately, wasn't enough. Only 206 points from the offense of the Capybaras to the Pioneers' 248. And then going into the pitching matchup, some pretty stout pitching staffs on either side here. 265 for the Pioneers and 245 for the Capybaras. So, of course, that gives you the roughly 61-point discrepancy. Taking a look over in kind of like the number side, more or less pretty similar at-bats. 255 for the Pioneers, only 246 for the Capybaras. But the Pioneers just absolutely destroying in every category. 46 total runs scored to only 25 for the Capybaras. 35 RBIs to only 28. Less strikeouts by only one, so more or less pretty equal there. And really just kind of an all-around, I don't want to say dominant, but all-around complete performance from the Pioneers to get back into the win column.
Yeah, absolutely. Two game win streak now for the Pioneers, and it's interesting. We did sneak a second one. It's interesting. I was before we started recording here, I was kind of messing around with some Pythagorean win loss stuff, the Bill James formula. And Joinville is actually a really interesting case where they are currently 7th in points for and 4th in points against. And frankly, in both of those cases, that doesn't really account for them being in 13th place. I'm really interested to see what this team looks like the rest of the season. They had scored a lot more points than I thought they had. Given their record, I was expecting them to be a little bit lower, closer to the bottom. And yeah, I mean, they're top half for points scored so far. In Portland's case, things went pretty well. Got the starters that we needed to have their starts. Sandy, Tolley, Cease, Sonny Gray. Nice to have those guys, and definitely nice to have a good offensive week after the bats had been slumping for a little bit there. So nice to see them have a good week there.
21 from Devin Williams, 22 from Raisel Iglesias. Brad Keller contributing 15, Whitlock with 15. Anytime your relief pitchers are not putting up negative performances, looking at you, Jack Perkins, it's a pretty good day.
Yeah, they're an underrated piece of this. We don't talk about relievers too much on the pod, but they're important. They sort of fill in the cracks of an overall pitching staff's performance. So it can make a big difference in the long run. The Arctic Real Survivors took on the Valley Gift Lords. Arctic entered the week at 4-3, with the Gift Lords entering the week at 3-4. The Real Survivors did take an early lead on Monday, scoring 20 points to just 11 over in the Valley. Half of those points did come from Max Muncy. A little bit bigger day on Tuesday, as both teams would score 83, 12 points from Trent Grisham and 17 from Didier Fuentes. Speaking of good relief pitching performances over in the Arctic. On Wednesday, the Valley had 121 points, 12 from Colson Montgomery, 18 from Nick Kurtz, and 20 from recent trade acquisition Mickey Moniak. Wasn't a bad day over in the Arctic. Framber had 26 and Xavier Edwards had 12, but unfortunately Jake Latz had minus 12, so that did unfortunately erase the second baseman's work. On Wednesday as well, I should mention, with those 121 points, the Valley did take the lead, and they would hold it with a second straight 100-plus point performance on Thursday. This time it came from pitchers. Anthony Kay with 21 points, Michael McGreevy with 22, and Kyle Harrison with 26. Jesus Luzardo, former Gift Lord, did have 26 over on the side of the Real Survivors. And on Friday, we would see the Survivors win the day, although not take the lead back just yet. They had 11 points from Max Muncy and 20 from Jesse Schultens. Nick Kurtz had another 10 points for the Gift Lords on Friday. Coming around to Saturday, the Arctic Real Survivors scored 77 points to 70 over in the Valley. 18 of those coming from Munetaka Murakami for the Gift Lords. Over on the Real Survivor side, it was a pair of vets in Harper and Mookie Betts with 13 and 11 points, and then Trevor McDonald with a nice 30 for the Giants pitcher. It would not be enough, despite Grant Holmes' 29 points for the Real Survivors to overtake, as they would lose to the Valley Gift Lords 537 to 495.
Kind of close matchup going into the weekend. The Real Survivors just shy of what their projection was, 497 for the projections, of course, to get 495. But the story here is really the Gift Lords just absolutely blowing their projection out of the water. Projected 445, scoring 537, as you mentioned, so almost about 100 points clear of their projection. And looking at the numbers here, The Arctic Real Survivors really had kind of control of the pitching side of it. 304 total points from the pitchers there on the Real Survivors, which is just absolutely insane. But the Gift Lords, not far behind at 298. So really keeping pace there, and ultimately the difference did come in the lineups. 238 points scored for the Gift Lords to only 190 of the Real Survivors. And the crazy thing is, too, I think the reason why I wanted to point out this as well, the very close point scores in the pitching staffs, is because looking over in the total stats of the week, the Real Survivors had 95 innings pitched to only 66.2 of the Gift Lords. Only had 8 more strikeouts, so, about 30 more innings worth, only 8 more strikeouts in that. It's definitely not great. Did have, 7 wins to only 4 for the Gift Lords, but the Gift Lords really just started to take care of business in the rest of these categories. Only 17 earned runs allowed to the 41 for the Real Survivors. That's a big discrepancy there.
A big number.
Like I mentioned, to only have, a 6-point difference in terms of pitching staffs, that's pretty impressive. Only 67 hits allowed to the 88 for the Real Survivors, 19 walks given from the Gift Lords to 234 for the Real Survivors. And this is a big one here. We were just talking about relief pitchers. 10 saves for the Gift Lords to only 2 for the Real Survivors. And on top of that, only 1 blown save for the Gift Lords to 3 for the Real Survivors. So again, in these big categories, the saves are massive points. Blown saves are killers for the most part, because, again, for the most part, you're also going to have an L attached to that. And I'm no mathematician, but 3 blown saves to 3 L's. I'm sure it's not like that, but the math is certainly math in there.
The correlation isn't zero. As the more we've sort of constructed rosters in this league, I've kind of felt more and more like that GIF where like they click on 2 switches, and then as soon as they click the third switch, one of the others turns off, and then they click that one and the third one turns off. So they click the other one and it turns, and it just keeps going back and forth. And I kind of feel like you can have bats, you can have starting pitching, and you can have relief pitching. And it has become more and more clear that the GIF Lords vision for this roster is fantastic bats and some really, really good relief pitching. And sitting at 4-4 now, it certainly seems to be working out for them. I mean, when you look at the names, Yohan Duran, Mason Miller, Adrian Morejon, Cade Smith, like they have some of the best relievers in the game, period. And obviously, to some extent, that comes at the cost of the starting pitching staff, which I admittedly kind of burned on the midweek episode. And then JT Jin kind of said, screw you, man, and scored 24 points anyway. But it is, I think, it's been really interesting to me to see as we've understood these teams more and more, like how they are constructing rosters. And the Gift Lords seem to have a pretty clear vision, and obviously it worked out well for them this week.
You want to see how much the relief pitchers are important to the Gift Lords. Go ahead. Cade Smith, as you just mentioned, had 35 points this week. He himself outscored every single other starting pitcher that the Gift Lords had, except Andre Payante. And Andre Payante, I should mention, had 2 starts this week, and he only outscored the relief pitcher by 4. So Take that for what you will.
That is a solid relief core they've got there. The Valley Gift Lords did have one of our best batters, number 5, Nick Kurtz, with 46 points on the week. I did realize I forgot to mention 2 best batters earlier in our last matchup. Portland did have number 4, Corbin Carroll, with 48 points. And, of course, as Ace previewed just a little bit, Gavin Sheets was our number 1 best batter with 58 points on the week there. So wanted to make sure those 2 didn't slip through the cracks before we move on to Fenton versus Sault Ste. Marie. So, look, the result of this matchup could flip before I finish this sentence. So take everything what I'm saying with a little bit of a grain of salt, but obviously a very exciting matchup that we have here. Joey Cantillo started things off strong for the Melonheads, scoring 29 points to account for most of the 41 total they scored on that first day. Just 3 points scored by Sault Ste. Marie on Monday. Fenton held the lead on Tuesday, scoring 50 to the 73 over in Sault Ste. Marie. J.J. Weatherholt with 14 points for the Melonheads, and Brian Bayo with 24 for Sault Ste. Marie. Wednesday was a quiet day, 78 points for Fenton and 53 for Sault Ste. Marie. No real standouts there. But Thursday, things picked up a little bit more as the Melonheads scored 63 points, 98 scored over for the Locks. For the Locks, it was Matt McLean scoring 11 points and Emmett Sheehan, their new starting pitcher, with 27. For the Melonheads, it was also a batter and a pitcher, Jordan with 14 and Zebby Matthews with 35. On Friday, our first 100-plus of the matchup, we saw 130 points scored by the Fenton Melonheads. Kyle Schwarber had 21, Spencer Arrighetti had 36, and don't forget about Randy Vasquez with his 29. A bit of a tough start selection here as Jansen Junk, unfortunately, had -4 points for the Melonheads, and Connolly Early, who did not get the start, had 14. Now, look, 14 points isn't a great start, but with Junk's -4, if you had switched them, that is 18 points there, and given how close this matchup was, that one definitely stings a little bit. Matt McLean had another 15 points for the Locks on Friday as well, as that contributed to their 78 total. On Saturday, it was the Locks' turn to score 100-plus as they got 21 from Logan Henderson, 23 from Kyle Leahy. Chad Patrick also had 23, and the hometown number 1 overall pick, Casey Mize, had 30 points for the Locks. Drake Baldwin with 11 points on Saturday helped contribute to the 91 total. On Sunday, we would come all the way down to it, just 16 points scored by the Fenton Melonheads that would leave them vulnerable. Sault Ste. Marie scored 50 points and were about as close as you can get from overtaking. Chase DeLauder, in his final appearance for the Locks, did have 11 points. Bryson Stott had 13, but the one that hurts the most, it's Brian Bayo with a -8. And folks, we do officially have a Bassett. That is negative points from a pitcher on a Sunday that accounted for the loss. You all know the scoreline because we've been talking about it. 471.7 for the Fenton Melonheads and 471.5 for Sault Ste. Marie. It comes to no surprise that that is, of course, our closest matchup of the week with just 0.2 points separating them. And again, literally since I started the recap, this could have flipped. So you know more than I do.
Man, this one was a bit crazy. Huh? So I'll just start, going with some numbers here. The Melonheads didn't even have, or let me take that. Yeah, the Melonheads didn't have a bad matchup at all in terms of their projections. They were projected 461. They scored 471. That's good and all. Sault Ste. Marie was only projected 414. So to get up to 471, blowing their projection out of the water, and still falling just that little bit short, that's got to be heartbreaking. I can't lie to you. That one definitely stung a little bit. Hurts. Obviously, like you mentioned, there is still a very, very real chance that this score can flip. I'm not even sure what the bench points would be, who would win that tiebreaker there, but maybe the Marie Locks only need, just that 0.2, just a tie in terms of the starts, and maybe the bench points could accumulate a win for them. But for where they are, or for where they were coming into this matchup at 1-6, that is a heartbreaking one. We never like to say that a season can be over, after week 7, but it might be getting early late for the Sault Ste. Marie Locks.
It is, yeah. To your point, Sault Ste. Marie does have the lead in bench points as of right now, 39 points for the Melonheads, and just over 40 for the Locks. So it is just that 0.2 that they need to flip. So I guess assists won't be, if they change a wild pitch, I think that would be enough. On the other side too, of course, if the Melonheads do have more points go in their favor, that extends that lead just a little bit. So if any other corrections come in, Yeah, just insanity here. What a week for Matt McClain with 39 points. He showed out really well for the Locks. And Drake Baldwin, who I mentioned this in, I think, the Talkin' Baseball channel, but the fact that the Braves were able to trade away Shea Langoliers and William Contreras and aren't starving for catching help at all because they have Drake Baldwin, unbelievable. 35 points he was. Their second highest scorer, only, of course, behind Kyle Schwarber, but he's Kyle Schwarber, so he's there every week. And yeah, like you said, really good performances on both sides to sort of add on to all of the drama. Of course, this would be the number 14 team taking down the number 1 team if they had done that, or if they do that, I should say. So yeah, drama from top to bottom here. And regardless of whether it flips or not, a really impressive showing from the Locks. I do think, obviously, it's not a great start to the season. I think even KJ would say that. But weeks like this, I think, are a flash of what this team can be and what a good fantasy player I think KJ is. This is not a reflection
at all on KJ as a manager. Again, expansion team. There are going to be some struggles in your first inaugural season, but I think he's done a pretty great job so far, all things considered.
Slide on down to our fourth matchup, which is the Seoul Sovereigns versus the North Pole Natty Bows. Seoul came in 1 game ahead of the Bows at 5-2, with North Pole at 4-3. Monday was a quiet day, although North Pole did take a 10-point lead on that day, 35-45. On Tuesday, Seoul would take that lead away from them, scoring 73 points, 37 of them coming from Mackenzie Gore. Shohei had a nice 10-point day for the Natty Bows on Tuesday as well. And on Wednesday, we would see our first 100-plus of the matchup as North Pole scored 125. Byron Buxton with 16. Kyle Bradish had 34, but the big ticket was Shohei Ohtani with 37. Not a bad start at all from Shota Imanaga with 25 points either over on Seoul's side on Wednesday. On Thursday, North Pole would hold the lead that they had taken on Wednesday with 14 from Ryan O'Hearn and 26 from Chris Sale. Chase Dolander's minus 11 was a bit of a stain on the day as he did end up going on the injured list shortly after that. The performance would be matched on the other side, though. Juan Soto had 12 points, Nolan McLean had 26 points, and Braxton Garrett had a minus 13. So both teams had a good batter, a good pitcher, and a pitcher with a minus in the teens. Funny how things line up sometimes. On Friday, we did see a miracle, some are saying, as Luis Arias hit his first home run of the season, scoring 14 points on that day for the North Pole Natty Bows. Joe Ryan with 28 as well helped them hold that lead. On Saturday, Nick Martinez had 26 points for the Sovereigns as they scored 64 total to 68 over on the North Pole side. Shohei's 19, however, would be enough for the North Pole to hold their lead going into the final day of the matchup. But at the last moment, Seoul would flip things on Sunday, scoring 103 points, 13 from Sal Perez and 14 from Austin Riley. Ryan Jeffers' 11 points were certainly nice for the North Pole Natty Bows, but scoring just 38 points total on the day would not be enough for them, as Seoul steals a win on the last day, outscoring the Natty Bows by 10 points, 451 to 441.
Yeah, this one was a pretty solid matchup here. Both teams severely undershooting what their projections were. Now, Seoul Sovereigns was expected to win this game 515 to 511. Those were the projections going into it. And the Seoul Sovereigns, again, fall very short of that, not even cracking the 500 mark. Same on the Bows side. And really the story of this one here is kind of the flip-flop of each of the lineup and the pitching staff. Only 194 in total for the lineup of the Seoul Sovereigns to 264 for the lineup of Natty Bows. However, you go over to the pitching staff side, and what do we say? Always, pitching reigns supreme. Say it with me now. 259 for Seoul Sovereigns to only 176 for the Natty Bows. Now, I don't care what kind of week you're in. 176 is brutal no matter who you're playing, and that is with Shohei giving you 67 of that. So, one player giving you 67 of your 176. It's, and you just take a look at the roster, you see a lot of negative. Chase DeLaunder, negative 11.8. Brady Singer, negative 1.6. Jameson Talion, negative 10. And then Dennis Santana, negative 6.8 as well for the Natty Bows. And yeah, it really was just, that was the difference, was the pitching staff once again. I wanted to say Inten did have 89.1 innings pitched to only 64.2 to the Natty Bows. So, that is where the discrepancy comes in, although, we've seen in past matchups that doesn't necessarily always translate to a win. However, in this case, the Soul Sovereigns had it on lock.
Yeah, this is a good reminder that volume, just how important pitching volume is. The Sovereigns allowed 22 more earned runs. They allowed almost 20 more hits, but because they pitched over 20 more innings, they wildly outscored in those pitching points there. So volume really does matter. Those innings eaters are just so valuable, and certainly contributed to the win for Inten and the Sovereigns this week. Matchup number 5 is the Southwest Kansas Rabid Coyotes taking on the Cuyahoga Black Panthers. Cuyahoga took the lead on Monday, scoring 41 points, 24, scored over on Southwest Kansas' side. The currently red-hot Rafael Devers did score 16 points for the Black Panthers on that day. Southwest Kansas took the lead on Tuesday. Won't say no to Shane McClanahan's 26, but the story of the day was Bailey Ober's complete game shutout with 53 points. Big one for the big man. Southwest Kansas held their lead on Wednesday despite not having a key batter. Parker Messick with 29 points helped Cuyahoga score 96 on the day. Very slow Thursday, 4 for the Rabid Coyotes, 19 for Cuyahoga, 11 of those coming from Ian Happ. And our only real standout on Friday was Graham Ashcraft with a minus 12. However, through the end of those 3 days, Southwest Kansas did still hold the lead that they had established. On Saturday, they scored exactly 100 points thanks to the waiver wire boys, Bryce Elder and Davis Martin, scoring 22 and 30 points respectively. And on Friday, finally, we would see the big offensive explosion from these two teams. Gunnar Henderson had 15 points for the Rabid Coyotes, and over in Cuyahoga, it was a doubles matchup. Two batters, J. Ram and Dalton Varsho, both scoring 11, and then two starting pitchers over 30, Evaldi with 35 and Kevin Gosman with 32. However, the 115 points they scored on that final day would not be enough to make up for the deficit that Southwest Kansas has put them in, as we do see the Rabid Coyotes take this matchup 426 to 373. Two superlatives for this one. It was the fewest points in a win for Southwest Kansas with that 426, and it also featured the lowest scorer of the week, Cuyahoga, with 373.
Very, very close to being the second to last scorer of the week, so it would have been a battle of the basement dwellers as far as 1 week is concerned. But yeah, just taking a look at the numbers here again, I feel like I'm just beating a dead horse, but it's the pitching staff, shocker, that is the biggest difference in this. I'll start with the lineup really quick. Only 161 points for the Southwest Kansas Rabid Coyotes lineup, 238 points for the Black Panthers. But if we look over at the pitching staffs, this is where the biggest difference is. Over 130-point difference. Actually, I take that back. Exactly 130-point difference. 264.7 for the Rabid Coyotes to only 134.7 for the Black Panthers. So they, again, just taking a look at the negatives, that's really where the biggest issues lie. Tatsuya Imai, negative 7.2. Aaron Nola, negative 5.6. Grayson Rodriguez, negative 8.6. Graham Ashcraft, negative 7.3. Cole Sulser, negative 3.6. And then just taking a look at the pitching staff, the pitching stats. More or less pretty even innings pitched, 72, and I actually should say Cuyahoga had the slight advantage in that regard, 72 innings pitched, only 69, nice for the Rabid Coyotes. Even had him beat in strikeouts, 61 to 54, same amount of wins, dead even at 5, but this is where you really start to see those effects of, and kind of the letdown of the pitching staff of the Black Panthers. 53 earned runs allowed to only 20 for the Rabid Coyotes. That is brutal. 84 hits allowed to only 52. 33 walks allowed for only 17, and it really was just kind of a runaway at that point, and after that.
Yeah, lower scoring matchup overall. It was just kind of one of those weeks for both of these two. Obviously, the big name in this matchup is Bailey Ober. He was our number 2 potent pitcher with 62 points. His second start, frankly, wasn't even that great. But obviously, when you score 53 in that first one, that's gonna get you over the line there. So yeah, he was number 2 there, and again, just shout out to Cuyahoga. That team really has put together a nice offense. It is veteran-laden, like I talked about on the midweek episode, but they put up really good numbers. And I think if we sort of continue to see the pitching staff perform, I think if you see guys like Evaldi and Gosman continue to perform well, Messick continue on his hot streak, and then maybe have Imai figure things out a little bit, Bybee figure things out a little bit. If Andrew Abbott can kind of get back to where he was last year, I think this has a chance to be a really dangerous team. And yeah, shout out to the Rabid Coyotes as well, who finished the season, I want to say 4th from the bottom last year, so 8th place, and are on a serious win streak, a win-4 streak right now, and are pretty comfortably set into a playoff spot as it is. So shout out to Oki Sooner and the Coyotes there, who have done a nice job sort of revamping this roster. The only other thing I want to say, Casey Schmidt had 5 points on the roster for Southwest Kansas, and 23 points on the bench for them as well. So maybe start throwing Casey in the lineup.
Yeah,
and
Oki is taking on the role of Pod Curse.
Our second yeah, I know he's starting to make his way there. Our second to last matchup is the St. Petersburg Tropopologists going up against the Bronx Bandoleros. We saw the Bandoleros take an early lead, scoring 54 points to 13 over on St. Pete's side. Ryan Weathers accounted for 30 of those points for JMC and the Bandoleros. Tuesday, we saw 90 points from St. Pete and 123 from the Bronx, both in well spread out efforts. Zach Neto had 13 points, along with Dalen Lyle, who also had 13 points for the St. Petersburg Tropopologists on Wednesday, scoring them 56 points. And despite scoring just 8 points, the Bandoleros managed to hold their 3-day lead. On Thursday, we saw the Bronx tally up 74, 34 of them coming from Chase Burns, and a nice 24 points over on the other side for St. Petersburg. On Friday, we saw matching 100-plus days. Let me start with the Tropopologists. Ildemaro Vargas with 12 points. Dalen Lyle, again, with 13. And Emerson Hancock with 26. For the Bandoleros, it was 2 Yankees and 2 just, like, JMC TM guys. Ben Rice had 11 and Jordan Walker had 10, while Jack Leiter had 26 and Cam Schlittler had 36. On Saturday, the Tropopologists scored 58 points, Bandoleros scoring 34. The Tropopologists had Cade Cavalli scoring 24 for them, and Brent Rooker with an 11 as he has continued to heat up. Angel Martinez had 16 points for the Bronx, but unfortunately, Hunter Biggie with a minus 20, which I think outside of my Garrett Crochet start, I think is the biggest negative pitching point performance all season long. On Sunday, Vlad and Camanero's 10 points would not be enough as the Bandoleros would close out their wire-to-wire win with another 10 from Angel Martinez and 37 from Roki Sasaki. We did see the Bandoleros win in our biggest blowout of the week, 503 to 397.
Getting back on track. What we, here on the pod side of things, we're, kind of expecting this team to really bounce back in a big way, and they find themselves a nice victory here against no slouch at all. Like we mentioned, Prius has a ridiculous team going. We already know about the ridiculous duo of Skeens and Schoolboy. However, Schoolboy is out right now, so it's definitely put quite a damper on Prius' squad, and as their road back to the championship round. Angel Martinez has been absolutely ridiculous on an absolute heater for the Bandoleros, and a big reason, like you had mentioned, along with those New York Yankees and his love child in Jordan Walker. JMC's finding himself really, and Roki, I mean, that was absolutely insane performance. 37 points, as you mentioned. Fun fact, it is more than every other start of his. No, I'm joking. It's not more than that, but it's pretty damn close.
Yeah. But the fact that I believe you for honestly, a second,
yeah,
like...
he had a stretch here, like 3 starts in a row, 4, 4.6, 4.4. So what is that? 9, 13, 17. I mean, it's listen, it's not entirely, but it's pretty damn close. So to almost match your season total in points in one match is obviously, you know, a good sign, and I love it as a Dodger fan, but
it's close enough. We won't ruin a good stat with the truth, you know.
I do want to say, Hunter Bidge, I mean, that is a rough go of it. 1 inning pitched, took the L, of course. 7 earned runs, 6 hits, 2 walks for a minus 20 points on the week. Just absolutely brutal from a relief pitcher. I mean, that's why the hell are you getting left in that long for 7 runs as a relief pitcher? That is brutal.
Capital T, tough sledding there for Hunter Bidge. Yeah, that is brutal. But yeah, good. Obviously, nice to see the Bandoleros cross 500 there. Like you said, they do seem to be coming into form. I feel like I just keep saying it, but you know where I stand on this team. Angel Martinez was one of our best batters for the week, number 3 with his 50 points, and a staple on the list. Paul Skeens with 52 points was our number 5 potent pitcher there for the Tropopologists. Both of these teams are now tied in record at 3 and 5, and they're in 10th and 11th. So they're slowly creeping their way up that list, and it'll be interesting to see if just quickly sliding down to see their matchups for this coming week. The Bronx and oh my God, what the hell is my cat doing? Sorry, she's destroying the house. Let's see, Bronx, and then quickly taking a look for St. Petersburg. Yeah, so the Bronx are taking on a 4-4 team. So JMC does have a chance to sort of jump into that middle pack if he is able to beat Bose and the North Pole. St. Pete is going up against the 6-2 Arizona Asphalt, though. So that he doesn't as much have the chance to, jump a team and really inch up the standings there, but obviously does have a chance to kind of jump into that middle group as well. They say we just can't miss with these headlining matchups, and we didn't miss again this week as we saw the Washington State winners take on the Arizona Asphalt. It was a clash of 2 teams near the top of the league, and it certainly looked closer on Monday morning. This seems like the time to talk about it. As I'm putting down the stats, I'm always sort of like, I'm typing it out and I'm kind of thinking about little phrases I can throw in. I don't write them down or anything, but just makes the pod run a little quicker. And as I was writing down the whole, Sault Ste. Marie and Fenton thing, I was like, wow, and the closest victory we've ever had. Nope, that happened last week, and that is a record that will never be beat because, of course, as you all know, Washington State did move from, 5-2 to 4-3 midweek as a stat correction, put them in a tie with the Tropopologists, and St. Pete's bench points ended up as the tiebreaker there. So despite their records not being quite as, not being tied as they were entering the week, the 4-3 Washington State winners and the 5-2 Arizona Asphalt was obviously still a very good matchup. Things started off well for both teams. Washington State scoring 40 points, half of them coming from George Kirby's 20, and Arizona scoring 54 points, most of them coming from just 2 guys, Andres Jimenez with 18 and Mike Soroka with 33. Big days for both teams on Tuesday. Washington State scoring 92, mostly coming from a duo of starting pitchers, Zach Wheeler with 31 and Brian Wu with 30, but a massive 146-point day from the Asphalt would hold their lead. Luis Garcia had 17, Randy Arozarena had 23, and Freddie Peralta had 25 for Arizona on that Tuesday. Things cooled off just a bit on Wednesday as the Washington State winners scored 67 points, while the Asphalt scored 83, 38 of them coming from my good friend Jacob Mizorowski. On Thursday, despite his hot run of starts, Foster Griffin did have a -8 for the winners as they scored just 35 points on the day. Slower day for Asphalt as well as they had 41 points. But JJ Bladede with 22 points was obviously a pretty spectacular factor on that day. Coming into Friday, the Asphalt still held the lead they had established on Monday, and they would extend it, scoring 82 points to 44 for the winners. Andy Pajes and JJ Lede once again each had 10 points, with Miguel Vargas scoring 11. Over on the Washington State winners side, Brandon Lau scored 17 points. I am going to pause this just because I learned a fun fact about Brandon Lau. The Pirates are 0-3 in games where Brandon Lau has hit 2 home runs. That has nothing to do with the winners, but just a weird fact that he has
crazy.
3 2-home run games and they haven't won any one of them. That's Pirates baseball, baby. On Saturday, the winners would score 126 points, but it would not be enough for them to take away that lead. That 126 came off 10 from CJ Abrams and 55 from Christopher Sanchez. I wasn't a slouchy day either over on Arizona's side. Miguel Vargas had 11 points and Connor Prelip had 25. And Arizona would close things out, scoring 94 points on Sunday, 22 of them coming from Mike Soroka. It was a huge day in Washington to close the week out. Kyle Manzardo with 15, Zach Wheeler with 38, and Gavin Williams with 25. Although I have a feeling Mike is wishing that perhaps those 2 starts were coming tomorrow instead. As we did see the Washington State winners fall to the Arizona Asphalt by 40 points, 575 to 535. Unsurprisingly, this was by far the most points in a loss with that 535 there. And we also saw the highest scorer of the week in the Arizona Asphalt with that 575 points.
We back in the win column, baby. It's going good. My team is looking insane. I certainly was not expecting this. Like you mentioned, my best bat of the week was JJ Blade, who was a waiver pickup not too long ago, and at a position. Yeah, Monday. There you go.
Monday.
So, definitely very happy with that pickup there, especially given the fact that he is eligible in each and every part of the outfield. That kind of. That kind of flexibility is just awesome for the lineup. I was talking, I believe it was with Serial the other day in Fantrax chat, just talking about, for my bench guys, I love guys that have, multiple position eligibility, just because it makes running your team so much easier. When your main starters are out of the lineup, Bryce Matthews is second base, infield, outfield, again, multiple outfielders. So I just love that versatility. And yeah, as far as looking into the stats themselves, the offense, like you mentioned, normally the pitching staffs were pretty damn good. Mike edged me out, 307 to 290, so 17-point difference there. But I mean the hitters, the lineup is really where the difference was made. 285 points from the lineup is absolutely crazy. To almost get 300, to only be 25 points off a 600-point performance. I was really gunning for it. I could have made some better decisions earlier in the week to maybe get me there, but hey, what are you gonna do? A win's a win.
What are you going to do? A win's a win. Yeah. Unbelievable week on the pitching side for Mike. That 70 from Zach Wheeler was our number 1 potent pitcher. The 55 from Chris Sanchez was our number 4 potent pitcher. And to round things out, Arizona also had a potent pitcher in 56 points from number 3, Mike Soroka. But yeah, what Washington State's pitching staff just did unbelievable this week. But Arizona, they had the bats, man. JJ Blade making up for obviously a huge thing there. And Randy Rosarena definitely seems to be heating up. He had 36 points this week. And Miguel Vargas, who's just continued his awesome start to the season with 38 points there. Awesome stuff from them. That 19 points from Willie Adames on your benches standing out to me there. Maybe a trade can be worked out at some point for that starting shortstop as he continues to heat up. Yeah, maybe we can figure something out. With Lindor still on the bench. But yeah, obviously Clash of the Titans here. Another week of tough luck for the winners. And I hate to say it, I do feel bad now being just kind of beaten down on Mike. But, obviously when you score 535, you kind of expect to win the matchup or at least have it closer. But then he ended up going against the highest scorer. Just quickly peeking over 537 from the Valley. Mike would have lost to them. But outside of that, Mike would have beaten any other team this week. So he really did get kind of screwed with the matchup there against the Asphalt. And the winner's now on a sneaky L4 after starting the season 4-4. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in our next segment, the standing segment. Ace, why don't you tell us what
so rounding out the top of the
leaderboard is looking like?
It is the Fenton Melonheads. This is the 6-2 group that we got going on here. I'm close behind there at, like I mentioned, 6-2 myself, and the Soul Sovereigns in the 3 seed right now to round out that first group. Getting into our only 2 teams that are 5-3, we have the Portland Pioneers, my co-host Zang, and at the 5 spot we have the Southwest Kansas Rabid Coyotes, who are currently on a 4-game win streak. So started the season 1-3. Got 4 straight going, and they have a rapid rise. And speaking of rapid rises, let's get into a bit of a drastic faller here in our next series or next group of teams. The Washington State Winners still in a playoff spot in the 6th seed. However, they are 4-4, and as you mentioned, Zang, went in the middle of a 4-game losing streak. So they have fallen about as far as they possibly can with this losing streak while still being in the playoff hunt. I'm not sure when's the last time we saw Washington State out of the playoff hunt. I'm pretty sure they were in it all of last year.
I think it's only when the teams are sorted alphabetically that they're out of the playoffs.
So we could potentially see something that is unprecedented in the Lollygaggers Dynasty League. The Natty Bows, North Pole rounding out in the 7th seed, Arctic Real Survivors in the 8th seed, and the Valley Gift Lords at the 9th seed. Starting off our next group of teams at 3-5, St. Petersburg Tropopologists at 10, the Bronx Bandoleros at 11, and the Cuyahoga Black Panthers at 12. Joinville Friendly Capybaras by themselves at 2-6. However, they are not our basement dweller. That honor goes to the Sault Ste. Marie Locks at 1-7. Now that is pending because we will see what happens in this matchup barring any stat corrections. But for now, they are the resident basement dweller.
Yeah, because it's literally 0.2, we're going to do something we don't normally do, where we will actually talk about it briefly if the matchup does end up flipping. Sault Ste. Marie will stay in the basement as their points for are lower than Joinville, but they would be tied with them at 2-6 should that matchup flip. And then the only other change would be Fenton sliding from 1st to 3rd, with Arizona sliding up to 1st
really
and
hoping
Seoul
for you to
into
win that.
2nd place there.
Go Sault Ste. Marie!
So Ace is praying on that stat correct. But yeah, that's a quick look at our standings. Let's talk over the bench blunders. 3 from the Bats. Ryan Jeffers with 10 points on Tuesday for North Pole. 10 points was different in that matchup. So that is certainly one that hurts a little bit there. Jazz Chisholm had 13 on Friday for Southwest Kansas, but not to be overshadowed. Casey Schmidt had 19 on Saturday, also for Southwest Kansas. I think based on those two, Oki is probably feeling pretty grateful that he won that matchup handedly, because that would have been pretty tough otherwise. 2 more bench blunders. This time, in the arms. Ben Brown had 20 points for the Bandoleros on Thursday, sitting on their bench. And I'm quickly looking for the final score there. Yes, 42 points for Merrill Kelly on the Real Survivors bench on Friday. 42 points separated the Real Survivors and the Valley Gift Lords. So I'm sure there are decimals in there that would tell us, and I don't quite have the ability to look that up now, but obviously 2 there with Jeffers and those 10 points separated in 10 and Bose, and then 42 points separated Min and Al Marnett. So pretty crazy to have 2 there that made up for the difference in both of those matchups. Sliding to our claims corner, we started things off big time with Jesus Rodriguez going for $45 to the Washington State Winners. Zach Galoff, later to be traded, also went for $11 to the Winners. Fellow A, Jacob Lopez, went for $10 to the Valley, and Brent Hedrick finally went for $15 to Southwest Kansas. Felt like he was on the top of that relief pitcher points on the waiver wire for a while, and Okie finally scooped him up. Washington State also had a $12 bid in for him that failed, of course, being $3 shy of the winner. Brad Lord went for $13 to the Arizona Asphalt on Thursday, along with Sal Perez going for $10 to the Seoul Sovereigns. Ha-Sung Kim went to Portland for $17, and Henry Bolte went for $7 to Cuyahoga, with Seoul just missing out by 2 on a $5 bid there. Finally, we will slide down to the transaction tracker. We will talk over a few trades. Smaller docket this week, but there obviously are some smaller trades, and there are some much bigger trades. So we'll start, obviously, by just kind of going in order, and then I think just as we go, we'll talk over some of these. So, of course, the big one, the Monday bomb dropped. The Arctic Real Survivors traded Jeremy Pena and Shane Bieber to Washington State for Mookie Betts. I say, Poppy, can he play baseball? I say, man, can he play baseball? An all-IL trade there. What do you think of this one, Ace?
I mean, I'm a little bit biased, of course, because I'm a Dodger fan, so Mookie Betts, and for what it's worth, he has been electric coming off the IL so far, already 2 homers since coming off the IL. So I think, Mookie's always a play to, rack up some points, especially in the Dodger offense if they get going, and they have gotten going, albeit against a, pretty weak Angels squad. Sorry, Hideki. But I also think the biggest piece of this is Jeremy Pena. So I think this is personally and you even get Shane Bieber on top of it. I personally think Jeremy Pena is going to be one of the best players in fantasy. Mm-hmm. I think we talked about this last year in one of our last episodes. So I think this is an absolute win for Mike.
Yeah, I was texting with Mike a little bit as this trade was going down, and I described it to him as a true dynasty baseball trade. I do think this year Mookie Betts is going to be better than Jeremy Pena. I think probably even next year Mookie Betts is going to be better than Jeremy Pena. In 2 years, when Pena's 27 and Betts is 36, might be a little bit of a flip. You add in the Shane Bieber points on top of that. So look, Mike went into this with the winners knowing we might be giving up the better player in Mookie Betts. We are giving up the better player in Mookie Betts, but for the long term, having a guy like Pena, especially at the shortstop position, then obviously we know what Shane Bieber can be. It sort of fills out that roster nicely. So I wouldn't really label a winner or loser here. I think in the short term, I would probably say that the Arctic and Min came out the winner just because they got Mookie Betts, but this is a great trade for both sides. Sliding down to our next one, we have the Washington State winners once again. This time they send struggling at the shortstop third baseman Bo Bichette over to Portland for Jack Flaherty and Braden Montgomery, who is MLB's number 24 prospect. Arizona then sent Tanner Bybee, Cam Smith, over to Cuyahoga in exchange for Seth Lugo, Henry Bolte, and $38 in free agency acquisition budget. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this one? Obviously, Cam Smith being a piece of that Zach Wheeler trade last season, and you have decided to jump ship.
Honestly,
tell us a little bit about your thinking
here.
That
it comes down to is the fact that my outfield has seemingly, filled out very nicely from where it was before. I have Andy Pages has been absolutely just incredible to start the season. Riding, a bit of a high, more than I even thought was capable of him. We always knew the defense was there, the power was there, but he's really starting to put together just a all-around great season, earning more playing time, getting moved up in the lineup. I mean, he is my fourth best batter in terms of fantasy points per game. He's averaging 4.3 points a game. So yeah, he's got 10 home runs on the season. I'm pretty sure he leads the league in RBIs. Fun fact, I actually have the two guys who lead leagues in RBIs, Liam Hicks and Andy Pages. But yeah, like I mentioned, outfield has been great with Pages. Brandon Nimmo, although older, he's putting together a great season as well so far. Randy Rosarena, JJ Bleday has been a godsend. So yeah, I feel like my outfield has really started to come into its own. And I really didn't have room for Cam Smith. And as far as Tanner Bybee, I had been rocking with him for a while. He's a good pitcher, young. But I feel like where my team is now, I'm kind of in a little bit of win now mode. And kind of just, jumping through the window as best I can before it closes. So I think picking up Lugo here for me is going to be great in the long run because he's been fantastic this year for the Royals. And also, in the meantime, picking up a younger asset in Henry Bolte, who's already in the majors and is also an outfielder, so, potential higher upside for him there.
Yeah, Seth Lugo has quietly been one of the best and most consistent starters in fantasy the last couple years. Bybee, yeah, definitely failing to kind of reach those highs we saw in 2024. It'll be interesting to follow this one. Obviously, I'm a big Cam Smith believer. I loved him out of the draft when Chicago took him. I loved him even more when the Astros traded for him. But there's no denying it has not been off to the start I think any of us hoped for or expected. So it'll be interesting to see if he kind of starts to find his footing a little bit in Houston and flourish for Cuyahoga. But in the meantime, like you said, you get one of the best and most consistent starters in the league right now in Seth Lugo, and a young guy like Henry Bolte, it never hurts either. Cuyahoga traded Stephen Kwan and Trey Morgan, who is Tampa Bay's number 18 prospect, to Sault Ste. Marie in exchange for Bryce Miller. Joinville traded George Springer to the Arctic Real Survivors for a 2029 fourth. The Arctic Real Survivors then turned around and traded Merrill Kelly to North Pole for the Real Survivors 2027 second. So they did get their own second-round pick in this upcoming draft back. Washington State Winners traded Zach Galoff to the Valley Gift Lords for Paul Sewald. And our final trade, which came in just under the wire, and the last one we're going to discuss tonight, Sault Ste. Marie traded Chase DeLauder to North Pole for Cuyahoga's 2027 first-round pick and third-round pick, along with outfielder Mike Sirota, who is MLB's number 42. So obviously Chase DeLauder has been a hot name early this season. Speaking of the Zach Wheeler trade, he was one of the pieces that went over to Washington State in that trade. He was then flipped over to the Sault Ste. Marie Locks. I'm quickly pulling up that package to find out how he made his way over there. Let's see, what was the trade there? Sault Ste. Marie traded Trey Morgan, Ben Brown, got Chase DeLauder along with Trey Morgan and Ben Brown in exchange for Foster Griffin and Alec Burleson, and have now flipped the young Cleveland right fielder over to the North Pole, and they get back a couple of picks, a first-round pick and a third-round pick in this upcoming draft, along with, obviously, Mike Sirota, who's a pretty highly touted Dodgers prospect.
DeLauder,
what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm not going to lie, a bit of inside news here. I firmly had an offer in place for Chase DeLauder. I was ready to trade for him and just completely lock down my outfield. The offer was a first-round pick. It was the Real Survivors' first-round pick. My third-round pick in this upcoming draft, as well as I believe it is Nestor Gorman, the prospect out of Baltimore, for Chase DeLauder. Now, Gorman was specifically asked for. Originally, it was the number 62 ranked prospect. Oh, excuse me. As I wait for it to load. It's something George from Baltimore as well, funny enough. I want to say it's Nate George, maybe? Oh, wow. So
Names
my
that
internet
sounded
is
familiar
just
to me.
completely not letting me look at it. All right, that's unfortunate. I'll have to circle back to that. But definitely had a firm offer in place for Chase DeLauder. Yeah, I think this is, again, like I mentioned, Sault Ste. Marie, not in a particular great spot right now in terms of the win-losses. So being able to sell Lauder very high, getting a first-round pick this year and a third as well. Mike Sirota, like you mentioned, is a and it's a Dodger, so there's just few farm systems you just trust more, and the Dodgers is certainly one of them. So I like this move entirely for both sides, really.
Yeah, I think it's a good move for both teams where they're at. North Pole gets a strong outfielder and continues to just balance out that really strong offense. And, the Locks acquire some futures. Obviously, with a young guy like DeLauder, that feels a little bit like a future. So I first I was kind of surprised to see they traded him, but I really like Mike Sirota's profile. And then, getting obviously a first-round pick and a third in this upcoming draft. Is helpful for them as they are kind of building from the ground up as they, try and build a dynasty, as you would. That's where the name comes from. That is, I know. I'm just so funny. That's why you tune in. We'll slide on finally to the next week's notes. Arizona Asphalt versus St. Petersburg Tropopologist is our first matchup. Arizona, of course, tied in record for the top of the league at 6-2, with St. Petersburg at 3-5. Cuyahoga at 3-5 will be taking on the Arctic Real Survivors at 4-4. Joinville at 2-6 will be taking on the Rabid Coyotes, who are at 5-3. North Pole at 4-4 will be taking on the Bandoleros at 3-5. Sault Ste. Marie at 1-7 will be taking on the Soul Sovereigns at 6-2. The Valley Gift Lords at 4-4 take on their record companion in the Washington State Winners at 4-4. And finally, for our headlining matchup, the number 4 Portland Pioneers at 5-3 will be taking on the number 1 Fenton Melonheads at 6-2. Outside of that headliner, what's a matchup that stands out to you that you're going to be keeping a close eye on?
It's going to be the North Pole Natty Bows and Bronx Bandoleros. This is really, in my opinion, kind of I don't want to say make it or break it time for the Bronx Bandoleros, but you really got to get a win here to put you just within reach of one game of under 500 to really creep back up into the standings and not let it get too far behind. And for the Bows, sitting at exactly 500, this is kind of at a crossroad as well. You win here, you're in the playoff race. You lose here, you're most likely out of it. So I think this is a big matchup for both these teams. And I don't want to say a must-win this early in the season, but I'm definitely excited to see how this one's going to go.
Yeah, it's a 2-point swing for the Bronx. Obviously, as I mentioned, if they win, they will be tied up with North Pole, so they're in that same space with them, same record, and then it just comes down to total points scored, and I believe, unless I'm wrong, no, I think Natty Bows has the lead there in terms of the points there, but the one that's standing out to me is Valley versus Washington State. Man, two teams at 4-4. I'm really interested to see if the winners do bounce back this week. Obviously, a loss would take them a game below 500. And sort of bury them a little bit further below the Valley there. But a win would sort of firmly secure them into that middle group, and with the great total points for that the winners have, they're second place right now, just behind the Melonheads. That would put them right near the top and comfortably in a playoff spot again. So that's one I'm keeping an eye out on. I'm sure you all will be doing the same along with your own matchups, and we're looking forward to seeing you again this time next week.
You know what that makes you, Larry?
Lollygag.
Lollygag.